Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. Dwayne the Great Writer and Seer.
In this real side experience, I would initially find myself in a very forbidding position indeed. The location would comprise of as though a replication of streets typical of, say, a western region of the physical level Earth, but streets that were shrouded in an eerie and all-encompassing darkness, a darkness that's essence was very oppressive, as though weighted with malevolence. The buildings within the street were of a blackened appearance also, appearing to be rotting and becoming as though malformed from their original designs, all exuding a menace that was altogether repellent. The streets would seemingly be deserted, devoid of any body forms but for one, a human male, and as impressions revealed an individual on his respective process of awareness. However, it seemed he had taken on a taint or distortion of some kind that had somewhat thrown him momentarily off kilter. The process of awareness involves the facing and releasing of everything that binds us to the simulators, for it is the consciousness we have constructed since we first entered the simulators that through the ideas we have created through the body-vehicle mechanics, or ideas as created by others we have agreed with, that the consciousness is programmed and effected will be our lifetimes of experience in reflective accordance. The consciousness will not only consist of our own idea installations, but of the ideas that are the overall simulator effected we are experiencing within. For to operate in a simulator, we rather upload to consciousness the current state of the simulator as according to the overall consciousness idea design that is effecting it, the equivalent of uploading a computer game to our computers, and we take on then the game in whatever current state of development that it happens to be. And then we individually create as we do and experience within the overall simulator stadium the game template we have installed through the consciousness effected body forms which convert the ideas that are the simulators multi-dimensional layout and our own additional generated ideas into a simulation, we then experience for our comparisons by which the isness everything reality can be recognized from. And is recognizing real purpose that involves a releasing of every idea that the consciousness comprises of, as for the longest time operating as the isolated secondary personal self, as we have been for lifetimes, so we have been fully attached and embracing of the consciousness creation. As this secondary personal created self has rather taken on a life of its own, and of the consideration that its fabricated make-up is real, as opposed to just a creation, a tool for the real awareness, that which we actually are, and is animating through the consciousness-affected body forms, to recognize the true reality it is a part of from. We then must face and release not only our own uniquely constructed consciousness, but the ideas of the entirety of the simulator that also will be installed within it, the concept of facing creation and the personal self, as is always made mention of. As we go through this process, not only are some ideas harder to release than others, taking perhaps longer to relinquish through the emotional attachment we have with them, but very easy is it to inadvertently and indirectly pick up various idea agreements as we proceed with our ears recognizing journeys. Creation being the minefield of ideas, of laws, temptations, attention and focus acclaimers that it is, that all ideas effectively present as distractions from the real purpose of is recognition, but if regarded with indifference and detached objectivity, so we can traverse through our process and the creational realm, and no idea can attach, as we stand in the nowness of our real awareness true being states, and are not swept away by any of the distracting laws and captivations of the simulators. The ability to be nowness positioned with the true reality will take the moments it will to concretize, through a practiced focus that we can perpetually then maintain, as anything other than this real awareness nowness positioning, and we must be indulging then in attachment with created ideas. For if we are not standing as everything, we must be resigning ourselves to a something position, an idea, part or piece of the everything whole as clung to and experienced in the simulators through the personal self. This individual then, on his awareness process, had been sidetracked, so to speak. He had trawled an agreement idea or other, one of a decidedly restricting nature, that's reflective effect was expressed in the very oppressive and dubious position he currently was in, the streets of forbidding darkness. That although it's really just a case of determining the idea that has us in untoward circumstances and releasing it, that we are removed from such uninviting situations, for whatever reason, this particular distortion of idea the individual was having a difficulty in letting go of. I would approach and engage with him, and through this idea he was embracing that had him positioned in the dark streets where I found him, as he was generating all manner of emotional ideas in relation to the idea distortion he had taken on, that as we generate ideas via the body vehicles, So we are then removed from the nowness of the real awareness position and are floundering within the secondary personal self. So then this human male was a personal self operating and in a state of perpetual confusion and seeming disorientation as a consequence. I would assist him in the only way realistically possible, as he, like we all are the deciders of our experience and positioning in life, and I would attempt to convey to him the importance of returning to the nowness of his real awareness, true being state, to centre himself with the ears, and to release whatever idea distortion he had inadvertently taken on, and all the subsequent emotion, consideration, and attitudes he had generated in association. He was unreachable though, however, at this moment, and the scene would switch. I would find myself as the captain and pilot of a large commercial airplane, with a full complement of passengers aboard. My personal self has no current lifetime of memory reference to draw upon in regards to flying planes, but the real awareness that is part of the everything isness reality, an everything isness that is through all consciousness, as it effects into every form and feature that it does, so every idea that is consciousness placed, effecting into a simulation multi-dimensionally, is available to the real awareness, including the ability to operate any created technologies throughout the simulator. And so my form, as being inserted into this experience, could very readily be real awareness afforded everything required in regards to the ability to pilot a plane. For I had seemingly taken to the air with my passengers moments after the entirety of the planet Earth had been the recipient of global catastrophes and cataclysms. This once again was a heads-up potentiality of one of the many idea agreements the dark forces have managed to have installed in humanity's overall consciousness. As I often mention, the human race always have experienced enslavement at the hands of the reptilians and associated dark force body form expressions, and as nothing can befall an individual or a species experience absent of the idea installed, the idea of being controlled and subjugated by the dark force reptilians is an agreement that has been human consciousness present since the very inception of the human species. The foundation of the overall human experience then is established as that of control by the oppressive dark force body forms, but for the controlling agendas to be able to escalate and suppression become more so, additional ideas must be inserted into a consciousness along with the foundation template agreement of control acquiescence. The dark forces have various means and mechanisms of installing their agreements that they can advance their agendas for human enslavement, generally through marketed surface appealing ideas that are laced with additional unseen ideas, that as the one-dimensional surface idea is embraced, so the ideas attached to it are also installed into a consciousness. For intentionality is as an idea as any other, that as we agree with an idea that seems to present as beneficial, we also are agreeing with the intentionality behind the surface idea. Indeed, we are agreeing with the consciousness construct that generated the idea that we consider to have appeal, as any idea cannot be in isolation of the consciousness that forged it. The two are indivisible. Ultimately then, to agree with the dark force created ideas, we agree with their desire and intent to dominate and suppress. We effectively have extended them the ability where they can operate in this capacity in relation to our experience and body forms, as though an agreed-to movie and assigned are the roles all participants will play in association with each other. As the dark forces desire to now depopulate, and even to the extent of genocide of the human species, they are installing as many idea agreements of an apocalyptic nature that they are able into human consciousness, in the hopes one will become as a physical level actualized. For every idea agreement in consciousness is present in the nowness of the isness and effected in reality, but through the design of consciousness, with the inclusion of time and space idea factors, so a cause isn't its immediate effect, but rather rolls out in sequences of time phases. That of all the idea agreements in human consciousness, only certain of them will be effected physical level-wise at any given moment, and for situations to change, so must another agreement be embraced that effected will be alteration of overall human experience, an alteration that will take the processing moments it will to reach its culmination point, where the effect becomes so from the cause. But only if the agreement is maintained in a prominence above all others long enough to reach its effect will it be manifested physical level-wise. To reach the movie's end, although complete and on the disc, it must be sat through to a conclusion. If we switch movies part way through, now will be a new movie rolling out to the closing credits. And so we can be shown on the real side the various potentialities, the agreements that are human consciousness installed, and what of the options and versions of the various catastrophic extinction event scenarios come to pass, if indeed any do, is really according to what humanity decides. Which of the agreements are held in prominence long enough over all others to become a physical level actualized? As I said, this particular dark force instigated global situation, through the agreement that allowed such to take place, involved catastrophic phenomena of an earthquake and severe, almost biblical-like flood-orientated variety. As I flew the plane, so I would also be aware of another element of this particular version of dark force depopulation effort. For in this experience, exactly 5 days prior to the instigation of these global upheavals, on the real side, so I had been shown that a certain taint or distortion idea had been implanted also into humanity's overall consciousness. Every idea agreement will be effected initially on the real side, other dimensionally, and if held to, will filter through to the physical level in whatever form that reflects the idea's nature. In this case, the inserted, distorted idea, taking 5 days to become a physical level manifested, would express as every body form of every human being transformed into not only monstrous body types in reflective accordance with the nature of the idea that effected such to be, but monsters that were utterly deranged, as though absent of any sanity. As I said, this taint was introduced to humanity's consciousness 5 days prior to the instigated global earthquakes and flooding catastrophes, and so the assumption of these monstrous forms would coincide with the moment the earth cataclysms would commence. As I said, the global upheavals had already begun. My plane was airborne with the frightened passengers, but they seemed to be unafflicted, suggesting that necessary was it to be on the ground that this monstrous, form-altering affliction could be so. I would attempt to convey to my passengers this element of this dark force scheme, the monstrous transformation of humanity, but they would scoff at my claims, although fully accepting of the earth cataclysms that were wrecking the planet, as this was plain to see as we glided over the earth from above. I would take the opportunity, despite the circumstances. Terrified passengers, unlikely to be receptive to anything other than the embracing of their created fear emotions in response to what was transpiring, to reveal to them the reality of the real side, the intuitive window and portal by which everything creationally transpiring can be afforded, including heads-up potentialities of situations set to befall the physical level, as this monstrous transformation of humanity had been information received through this very means. But my references and explanations fell on deaf and unconscious ears. My passengers were rather representational of humanity generally, locked into their created consciousness and personal selves. The scene would fade, but on re-establishing itself, I was still in my commercial airplane as the pilot, but it was now absent of one-dimensional, panic-ridden human passengers. Instead, I seemed to be on assignment to pick up select individuals amidst all the mayhem, the earthquakes, flooding, and marauding monsters that once were humanity, and relocate them to a safe position on the earth. This was a global situation, as I said. Realistically, there was no safe position to be found, and yet impressions revealed, those I repositioned on the earth, would be removed and secure from the floods, earthquakes, and monsters. Impressions suggested that although on the earth, those I picked up and repositioned would be as though slightly out of phase with it, as though an alternative dimensional version of the planet that wasn't in the throes of the global upheavals and at the mercy of the deranged monsters. The monstrous forms would never be revealed as to their appearances, just the impressions of they being far removed from the human body types they once had been, and most of which would be killed through the earthquakes or the severe flooding, any survivors mauling each other, as the monsters humanity now had become were as though driven mad and destructive, as I said. What has been revealed also is that should such situations, that of dark force implemented global cataclysms, be exacted, such effects can only befall humans that retain agreement fully with their dark force managed consciousness, as this would include agreements of these depopulation style scenarios should they come to pass. But for those humans who are on their processes of awareness, who are releasing agreements of consciousness, including these extinction event ideas, they are not resigned to the effects that humans fully embracing the dark force managed human consciousness will be. Such humans will have more options, more opportunities, including potential planetary relocation if such proves necessary, or in this case, being repositioned in as though an alternative version or dimension of Earth, as I would go about picking up these various humans and take them to certain positions of the Earth where their phasing into an alternative Earth could be so. My plane flying rather unorthodox, a few occasions I would be trundling it along the very streets amidst the mayhem and turmoil, but generally I was airborne. If vehicles on the real side represent ideas, then as the representation goes, my plane was the idea of a planetary, dimensional relocation, and the humans, those on their awareness processes, although having such options of relocation available through agreements released that unshackled them from overall humanity's experiential effects, they still had to agree with the idea of being rescued, and this would be represented by them getting aboard my plane, sitting within the idea that my plane represented that of dimensional Earth repositioning. At one point, I would land my plane on top of a large building to afford a safe passage to a group of humans. I would exit the plane, meeting them on the ground below, and as we ascended a set of stone steps leading up and through the building to my plane on the roof, we were pursued by sinister dark force agents, still adamant in attempting to disrupt and prevent the exodus of the aware humans. But they would be unsuccessful. We would make it to the roof, into the plane, and take to the skies, and I would fly them to one of the positions where they could phase into the alternative Earth, as though there were certain designated positions on the planet which served as conduit points or openings that allowed extraction from the Earth racked in upheaval. Interestingly, the scene would switch, and where I would find myself in the presence of the human individual I had encountered where this experience began, the one afflicted with a curious taint that had him somewhat out of countenance. Revealed now was that because he had, in a sense, reinserted himself into agreement with his consciousness through the constant generating and wallowing in the emotions and distortions of considerations he was creating in response to the taint he had inadvertently taken on. As a human, this was a reinsertion back into the human consciousness, where he was then the effect of the malicious idea installed that would transform all humans into monsters, just as all consciousness personal self-immersed humans would be the recipient of, including the global extinction event disasters to then be endured. And this would explain his aberrant and crazed behavior in addition to his emotional generating. That yes, the humans on their awareness processes will afford themselves more options pertaining to creational survival of the body forms, but as was revealed here in this experience, as I picked up these very humans, they had to agree for relocation. They had to get aboard the idea that was their means of extraction. And so, important is it to remain focused with the ears and not be carried off with idea distractions of creation and the personal self. For this individual, as I mentioned, had effectively done just this, and he always can realign and center himself with his real awareness nowness once again. But as things currently stood with him, he was locked back into the dark force managed human consciousness, which includes him then as the potential effect of that which it comprises of, including such scenarios as the one I have revealed here, and of becoming a monster with the unconscious, one-dimensional masses, and forfeiting his option of being relocated if such cataclysmic global circumstances come to pass. As always, humanity decides as to their overall experience, according to which agreements they embrace and maintain long enough to become physical level manifested. That as a human we are the recipient of what is decided overall by the human species we are a part of, but we are not resigned to that which unconscious humanity are. We have other options only as made available through awareness and intent set with the ears.
Okay, well, Kevin, that's a whole lot. It's an option. And it's a heads up, isn't it? Because we don't know what's going to happen in any moment at all. So again, we'll see. And yeah, the world is a funny place. I'm dealing with it too. Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, last night I was with a group of people in a room, quite a few of them, and trying to get their attention just to give them a little introduction. Oh boy, it was hard. Just interference after interference. So this is what we have to deal with, and it's not easy. It seems very simple, but it's not. Yes, thank you so much, Kevin. That's great. Do you